We are simply here to express ourselves as love, to experience even more love. And when we experience pain and fear and doubt and jealousy and judgment and all the ego-driven things that are in this perceived reality, we get to then know love even more because we can know the opposite of the feelings of love. I'm Elysia Skye, and this is the Brilliance Method podcast. Through mindful, motivational, and often hilarious conversations with thought leaders, entrepreneurs, and executives, you'll discover new ways to create your life on purpose. Hi there. Welcome to the Brilliance Method podcast, where you get to create your life on purpose. I am so happy that you're here, and we are kicking this show off today talking about everybody's favorite subject. No, not sex, money. But they're not as disconnected as you might think. So I have this mantra, so to speak, which says, my wealth comes from love. And I'm sharing this with you today because this isn't just true for me, it's true for everyone. So on today's episode, we're going to talk a bit about what it truly means to manifest. Where does our wealth come from? And when I say wealth, I mean an abundance of all types, but we are going to focus specifically on money today because that's what most people want more of in their life. And if you're somebody who already has a beautiful, luxurious amount of financial wealth, more than you would ever need or even want or be able to use, then apply these concepts that I'm sharing with you today to an area of your life that you are calling in abundance for. Perhaps it is love or health or joy, friendship, whatever it might be. So my wealth comes from love. What does that mean? Right? What is this hippie shit you're throwing at me right out the gate, Elysia? We're going to go on a little journey. Don't worry, it has a happy ending. It's kind of like a Disney story. It starts with a parent dying. So headline, parent dies. Okay. So I have a really interesting relationship with money, and we're going to visit this on occasion on this show. And it's kind of cool when you look at my astrology, at least my Western astrology. I have Jupiter, which is the planet of good fortune, in my money house. I also have Saturn in my money house. Saturn is the planet of, you could call it lessons or challenges. What are you going to be up against that you really need to learn a lot about in this lifetime? And it is no surprise based on the journey I've been on. My soul is here to experience many wonderful things, but one of the big lessons is around money. And what's connected to money? Self-worth, self-respect, self-compassion, boundaries, requirements, love, receiving, giving, community, belonging, all of it. Right? We have chosen to live in a society that revolves around money. It's just how it is in this time period in history. So I hope that someone is listening to this like hundreds of years in the future and they're like, oh wow, society was really hung up on this whole money thing, huh? Yeah, we sure were. We sure were for thousands of years, and we've been killing each other over it. So, oh my gosh. And then I also have Pluto in my money house. We will be bringing in an astrologer at some point to talk more about this. And we'll talk about Vedic as well as Western astrology in another episode. I'm here to learn about some money stuff. So let me paint you a little picture. Teeny tiny little Elysia and her sweet sister Ariel were 4 years apart. I usually make everybody guess who's older, but it's actually her, even though I tend to come off as older. I always have my entire life, and it's kind of a fun game her and I play. And when we were little, I was born into a very wealthy household, and I didn't know any better. I was just a little girl. We lived in what's basically a mansion with orange groves, and we had staff at the house. And my mother was an artist and loved being a mother. And my father was working all the time and barely home, and he was providing for all of this wealth, right? And a deliciously obscene amount of wealth, I'll put it that way. My sister and I had a playroom that was almost like the entire floor of the house with a carpet that had games on the carpet. And we had bunk beds that went all the way around the room that were custom. Like, it was opulence, honey. One of my earliest childhood memories is witnessing my parents arguing. And this may have been the only time this happened, but my father slapped my mother across the face. And I was about 2 years old, And I don't know where I learned this from, but I grabbed her hand and I said, "Mommy, let's call a taxi. We got to go." And that was it. She wound up leaving my father, and we had a series of financial ups and downs being on our own. And soon after, my father lost all of his money and wound up in prison, the first of two times, and an interesting money story. So, as a little kid, you don't really know or care if you have money or not. You're just being a kid, right? Enjoying your life or not, and spending time with your family and friends or not, right? You're doing whatever kids do. You don't have anything really to compare it to. And as I got a little bit older and my father went away to prison when I was 9 years old, and I asked my mother, "What happened? Why is Dad going to jail?" And she said he has been doing corrupt things and working for bad people. And what subconsciously got planted into my sweet little mind was that this money, this happiness that we had when we were little, when things felt easy, before I witnessed my mother struggling to pay our bills and take care of us, it was, I mean, I have many memories being a little kid in that house, a teeny tiny baby up until maybe 2, 3 years old in that house. And my mother was, I mean, she wasn't happy in her marriage, but she was a blissful, peaceful, happy artist and woman and creative and intuitive and just magical. So I never associated that time in my life as being bad or hard, even though we had to move a bunch of times and money was definitely a struggle and we were taught to shop on the sale racks and this or that. But she never deprived us of having fun. And we always had fun. And I know my grandparents helped out quite a bit. My family helped out quite a bit. And, you know, if it was our birthday and we wanted to have a party at the park and rent the picnic area, we could. And once in a while we would go to Disney World. And I didn't feel like a child that was without. But there's this, you know, in literature, they call it this loss of innocence moment that occurs when you hear some bad news and you start connecting the dots to things. And so when my father got arrested for financial crimes, something inside my mind associated, oh, wow, that easy time in our life financially was bad. That money was bad. It doesn't mean money is bad. I didn't think that, but I thought this wealth that we had was bad, right? My wealth came from a bad place, which it did. It's not really arguing that. It kind of did, right? So my mother did amazing raising my sister and I as a single mother. You know, we still saw my dad on the weekends and whatnot. Sadly, this is the Disney part of the story. My mother, when I was 12 and my sister was 16, my mother was struck by a car while she was crossing the street. She was dealing with some side effects from multiple sclerosis, and we believe that her peripheral vision was compromised. And as she was crossing the street at an event for the Florida State Massage Therapy Association, which she was the president of, which she was speaking at, she was hit by a car. It was an area in town where there were not enough lights on the street, and the valet was supposed to valet the car, and they didn't. They were on break, and they told her to go get her own car, which they should not have done. And I lost my mother. That was an extremely traumatic event, as you can imagine, for any child, but anyone at any age who loses their mother. I have so much compassion for that, and it sucks. Even though losing your mother is actually a natural thing that we should all expect to experience in our lifetime, we're never prepared for it, especially when we're young. So my mother dies, and we sue the valet company. My family does. And my sister and I, along with my mother's life insurance, we received a small inheritance. And, you know, it wasn't millions of dollars or even $1 million or anything like that, but it was enough to support us. My father was out of prison at that point, so he moved in and took care of us until he later, when I was in high school, he moved to California. But my godmother My grandparents, my aunt and uncle, they looked out for me. My grandfather lived with me for a period of time. Like, I had a great, great adolescent upbringing, aside from the fact that I just terribly missed my mother. But there was financial support. I did work. I worked in high school and even in middle school, sixth, seventh, eighth grade. I had a job since the time I was about 12 years old. My mom actually helped me get my first job at a hair salon, washing hair. She's like, if you're going to have a job, you're going to have a fun job with nice people and you're going to make cash tips. I was like, all right, Mom, am I going to be a bartender? And she's like, no, you're 12. You're going to work at a hair salon. Because I said I wanted some extra money, and she wasn't really able to give me any extra money at that time until she passed away. So I'm sure you can imagine what I then programmed even further into my precious, impressionable little mind when I received this inheritance a couple of years later after the lawsuit was settled. Oh, my wealth comes from death. My wealth in my lifetime has come from criminal activity and now the death of the closest person I have in this world. There's that Saturn in my second house, huh? So when I grew up, I'm still growing up, I guess. I'm in my early 40s at the time of filming this, but as I grew up and I received money, whether it was from jobs or at one point my sister and I sold the house that we had grown up in, that my mother left us, I would occasionally get big chunks of money, little windfalls, that would come in. And I later noticed a pattern that I would either spend it all pretty fast, and I would trick myself into thinking I wasn't spending it lavishly because I didn't have a shopping addiction. I'm not really that into shopping, despite the beautiful crystals that you might see if you're watching this instead of listening to this. I like nice things. I drive a nice car, but I'm a reasonable person as far as how I spend my money. But what I love is business, and I love real estate, and I've always loved those things. And I think perhaps growing up, especially as a creative, when I moved to Los Angeles, it was to be an actress, to be a movie star. So I'm going to spend my money on the best headshots and, going to the gym and getting my hair done at the best places and the best acting studios. And it just had to be the best. And I'm going to sign up for all the websites. And I'm going to have a car that I'm going to spend a lot of gas money on, driving back and forth across town for auditions all the time. People don't realize that it is quite costly to pursue a creative career. And you have to love it and you have to be dedicated to it. And maybe it was, my mother and her artwork or my sister and her photography, but there was no giving up. Not doing that was not going to happen, right? So I justified spending my money all the time because it was an investment. It's an investment. I'm investing in my career. I'm investing in this. I bought a condo. I bought a car with cash. I was like, I'm going to do the right things. And I did. And that condo was a huge blessing. It increased in value. I sold it. I bought a house. I sold that house. I bought multiple houses. I've done great things with my money. However, until I did this work that I'm sharing with you right now, money seemed to slip through my fingers, no matter how practical it was. I didn't like the idea of having a savings account or having financial investments because my mother died when she was 37 years old. So even though this was more of a subconscious idea, I thought, why should I save money for retirement? What if I don't make it to retirement? My mom didn't make it to retirement. Why do people work so hard their whole lives and not have fun and wait until they're 55 or 65 to start enjoying their life? I'm just going to enjoy my life as much as I can now because you never know when your light's going to go out. So the idea of having a savings for my future didn't align with me because I didn't have a proper role model in my life to show me what it looked like to have a solid future. Now, the exception to that is, of course, my uncle, who works very hard, but he has a wonderful life and he takes care of 3 kids. And it's a different lifestyle than I knew that I wanted. And then my godmother, she made good money as a doctor and she spoiled the hell out of my sister and I and raised us like we were her own and was so good to her husband. And did anything and had anything she wanted, but she worked her ass off. She was on call 24/7 for her patients. She'd be asleep on the couch because we're watching a movie and she passes out because she's tired from working. And then a patient calls her at 10 o'clock at night and she answers the phone with perfect clarity and her strong intuition just to help them. And again, I thought, I love that she has dedicated her life to being in service. And we're going to talk about that today too. But that's not the life for me. I don't want to be a doctor. I don't want to be a financial banker. I don't want to be a criminal, and I don't want to get hit by a car. So I don't know how to do this. So I'm just going to figure it out, right? My friend Paul says, we were raised by wolves. I'm like, you know what? We kind of were. So if you feel like you were raised by wolves, I get it. So it didn't occur to me until I was going through a pretty hefty debt cycle again in my 30s, where I received a bunch of money, tens of thousands of dollars, and still had credit card debt. And then paid off all the debt, debt-free, living my life, and then racking up debt again, received a giant sum of money from some job, and then paid off all the credit cards, and then trucking along, right? So there was no structure here. My friend and colleague, Miata, she is a financial empowerment coach, and she will absolutely be on this show. And she later taught me that when you have an inconsistent income, an unreliable income, the thing that you can, quote unquote, budget for and plan for is your expenses. Because I had always been taught, okay, well, you're just going to have to plan for your spending. Because most people, when they're talking about budgeting and things like that, they're like, oh, here's how much money you make each month, and here's your expenses each month, and it's either positive or negative at the end, and you figure it out from there. And I'm like, but my income changes all the time. So I couldn't wrap my mind around it until I started working with Miata. And Miata had said, you know what is consistent for the most part are your expenses. So if you can navigate your spending and your earnings around what you know your expenses are every month, that works just as well as creating a budget based on your income every month. And that was my mind was fucking blown. It seems so obvious that I couldn't figure that out. And she has supported so many actors and creatives, and she's a magical woman. So I can't wait for you to meet her on the show. I'm continuing to go through these cycles. And then 2020 hits. Now, my husband and I have a secret that I'm going to say on this show. We had a great pandemic. We had like a really good pandemic. Anyone else have a good pandemic? Right? Where we kind of felt bad about how great it was. And I don't mean that it was great for the world and it wasn't great for everybody who was sick and ill and passed away and all the fear and so much politically. None of that was great. But what was great was him and I creating. We were living in Los Angeles and we had two roommates at the time, our friend Izzy and our friend Paul, both who were highly creative. So Paul wasn't working because his day job was to cut hair, but he's an amazing musician. So he wrote music and started doing live streams. My husband, an incredible musician, was writing more songs, wrote a beautiful song when the pandemic hit called When the Sun Comes Up. And he started playing live streams. Izzy created an animated television show and learned how to edit and animate on her iPad. And we had the vocal booths. We were doing voiceovers, and I started my coaching business, and I was creating online courses for people who didn't understand how to do their courses on Zoom instead of in the studio. And it was really, really fun. And it was a good time. It was a good creative time. It was a quiet time in LA. It was a beautiful time seeing nature in the world come out. I don't know if you remember, but there were videos and pictures of Las Vegas, of animals just walking down the strip, and in Venice, the swans coming back out into the canals, and just so much healing actually happened when humans retreated. And that was true for a lot of the humans as well. And my little bubble tribe, my little pandemic pod, we had a lot of healing. We received a lot of healing. Now, it wasn't that easy necessarily for everybody in my pod, so to speak, but for my husband and I, it was actually really lovely. And what was lovely, one of the things that made it really easy was I had built a guest house on our property. And the gentleman who was renting it, I thought, oh, the pandemic hit, he's probably going to move out. And da, da, da. He's like, no, he was working for JPL in the aerospace industry, and they were paying for his rent. So he was there and paying the rent, and the rent in the guest house covered my entire mortgage. and I was working a video production job at the time for all these universities. And they said, hey, we need to hold production until we know what's going on. Later, we wound up doing the online courses. But then I was receiving unemployment at $450 a week from them, which was the maximum California pays. And then there was a government supplement for an additional $600 a week. Now, when you're used to making a lot more money than that, and in 1 week, more than $10.50 a week, which I was, it was not great, but for a lot of people, that was more money than they had made in a long time, right? We got really creative with it. So keep in mind, as far as the household goes, there was some money coming in creatively, and I was on unemployment. And then the SBA in the United States offered funding for businesses to help you with the pandemic and to help you restart and relaunch your businesses. And it was a huge relief. And the SBA really saved our asses once things started to bottleneck. And we wound up choosing to sell our house in Los Angeles and move to Nashville. So the reason I tell you all of this so transparently is because I got to be less busy, which meant I got to take a step back and reflect and look at my life and look at my patterns. And as all this money was coming in, when you think about the stories I've shared already about the pain connected to large sums of wealth, I knew if I wanted to change the patterns in my life, I had to make a different choice when it came to receiving this unemployment and this SBA money. Now, fast forward 2021, we live in Nashville. I am being very conscious of my finances, but I still firmly believe that when big sums of money come in, there's something bad connected to it. Even though logically I know that's not true. But when it comes to trauma, logic isn't always on our side. Even when it comes to love, logic isn't always on our side, right? So summer of 2021, I reach out to my grandmother, who I hadn't seen the whole pandemic. So many times I said, Grandma, I'm going to take a test. As soon as it says I'm negative, I'm going to put on a mask and I'm going to drive 13 hours straight down to Fort Lauderdale and come and spend time with you. And she kept saying, no, 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 don't do that. It's too dangerous. You still got to get gas. It's too dangerous. She was 91. And I understood, but I missed her. And so it was June of 2021. And I called her and she didn't sound very good. Now, this woman was Miss Atlantic City. She was very much a socialite. She was a poker player, a beauty queen, just an amazing woman. And to be isolated, I believe killed her. She did not have a good pandemic, and things really took a turn for her, for me, and for my godmother. So the women who had been raising me and looking after me were getting sick. Let's start with my grandmother. So my grandmother, I tell my grandmother, hey, I'm coming to see you. You don't sound good. I'm coming to see you. And she's like, okay, fine. I get to Fort Lauderdale in the early evening. I call her. She has a nurse now who answers the phone and says, you know, your grandmother's asleep, but I'll let her know that you're coming. And she said, why don't you come in the morning? And because she's going to sleep through the night. And I said, okay. I said, please tell her though. Please tell her I'm coming. So then the next morning I wake up, I call to say I'm on my way. And she says, you need to come right now. She was out of it last night. She was having hallucinations. And this is common when people are getting ready to cross over. They see their loved ones who have crossed before them. I believe their loved ones are there to greet them and to help prepare them and make it easier for them to cross. So when she said she's hallucinating and she's talking to her brother and she's talking to her husband, and I was like, oh, it's time. She said, but I told her that you were coming. So I think she's waiting for you. So my uncle and I drove over there, and she passed away within 15 minutes. I think she just wanted to see us. He was the closest person to her, and I was probably the second, besides her husband who had passed. She was waiting for us. And when she passed away, my sister and I received what would have went to my mother. So here we are again. Here we are again. And I've had some reflection and some time to do things differently, but I wanted some help. I wanted some support. So I hired a coach. I was working with this group of coaches of all different niches, and the mindset coach, her name is Elysia Skye, and she lives in Australia. And we were coaching through pocket coaching, which was on Voxer. Now there's like Voxer, Telegram, WhatsApp, sending each other voice notes back and forth. It's very effective, really easy, especially if you're in different time zones and whatnot. And I was telling Patsy, I'm so scared that when I receive this money, and again, it's not a ton of money, right? It's not even $1 million. It's not. But when I receive this money, I'm scared I'm going to blow it, Patsy. I'm scared that all the big chunks of wealth in my life have come from death and pain. And I'm so scared of it. And she said, Elysia, why did your mother have a life insurance policy? And I said, because she loves me and she wants me to be taken care of. And she said, okay. And now you're going to receive a small inheritance from your grandmother. Why did that get set up? I said, because she loves me and she wants me to be taken care of. She said, okay, now let's talk about what you do for a living. Do you love what you do? I said, I do. I really love what I do. She said, okay, so it sounds to me like your wealth comes from love. Mind blown. Like, oh. It's like, it sounds like the people who love you set something aside to take care of you, and you are so loved. So let's work on undoing this association of money with pain and death and loss. And let's create an association of money connected to love and maternal love and grandma love and creativity and joy and helping others. It's like, I can do that. I can do that. So since the summer of 2021, I have an alarm that goes off every morning that says my wealth comes from love. But I've expanded on it since then. And I'm so grateful to Patsy for helping me get to the bridge. But I had to cross the bridge on my own. And I'm a very spiritual person. As you dive deeper into this podcast, you'll get to experience that. I'm a very savvy businesswoman, but I'm very intuitive. And I was never religious, but I believe in love. And I believe that God is love. Some people say source, universe, higher self, Lord, whatever you want to say. I'm just going to call it God because that's easy. So God is love, an energy of love, a creative energy that we are all a part of, that we are not separate from. And it finally clicked in February of 2024. All these years later, more family loss later, more big wins, big windfalls later, another debt cycle later, it finally clicked. I couldn't sleep one night, which is not that uncommon for me. I can fall asleep in a minute, but I tend to wake up frequently throughout the night. So I was doing an evening meditation in the middle of the night, and I'm very clairvoyant, so I get a lot of visions. For a long time, I thought it was more of a claircognizance, meaning a knowing or a loud thought, but that's really common for people who don't understand what clairvoyance is. It is a thought, but it's actually pictures. I just didn't notice that there were pictures because I'm so used to seeing the pictures. The same way you might not even realize you're thinking because you're so used to thinking. So I had a vision in my meditation of this infinity loop moving around the energy of my heart, which I'll refer to as the heart chakra. We have many chakras throughout our body, above and below our body, and there are more than 7, but for today's episode, we're just going to talk about the heart chakra. So I felt this infinity loop moving around my heart chakra, And I started hearing, my wealth comes from love. My wealth comes from love. And I had this disconnected ego thought. Let me break this down real quick about the ego. So I believe that the ego is here for a great purpose. Our ego is here to keep us alive. Okay, you can call it your fear instinct or whatever you want to call it. But we have this ego that encourages us to not take big chances, to play small. It's here to keep us safe. And that's not a terrible thing, but that's its job. And sometimes it does its job all too well. And we don't take chances, or we start to doubt ourselves or judge ourselves or others. And the ego tends to take over because the ego loves having a human body as a host. The ego loves being on earth. The ego loves duality, light and dark, and death and pain and all the things, because that's what it knows. That's what it knows to run from, and that's what it knows to create in small ways to prepare you. And the ego cannot survive without the body. The ego is not eternal. However, your soul is eternal. Your soul does not require a body. Your soul does not require a body to have any experience. So the ego came through, right? I'm having this breakthrough, like, oh, my wealth, it's like this infinity loop around my heart. So love is eternal, and wealth and abundance and creation and creativity is eternal, and I am eternal. And then my ego came in my meditation to interrupt it and said, hey, you've been putting in a lot of hard work to fix your money problems, right? Don't forget we've been helping you to fix your money problems. So I'm hearing, wait, money problems? I have money problems? I have money issues? I have money trauma? What? What is all this shit? Right? I believed my ego for so long that I was tricked into thinking, I was tricked into believing my wealth was separate from me, that my wealth was out there, that my wealth was created from a curse or causes, or that I had to work really hard for it, when the truth was within me all along. My wealth comes from love. So if God is love, and I am a part of that universal oneness, that energy of God, then what am I? When I was in Jerusalem, I met this rabbi, and he told me a sweet story of a little girl in a family that he knows. And she said, Rabbi, what is God? And he said, well, God is love. She said, well, where is God? I can't see God. And he said, God is everywhere. And she said, oh. And then he said, so where are you? And she looked around and she said, I'm in love. Isn't it wonderful? It's so wonderful. I am in love. So I never forgot that. But I didn't apply it until now, until this moment. It was this aha moment that I had been living in this 3D ego-driven perspective about money. And I thought, how did I get here? I know I am love. I know that we are nothing but love. I believe God is love, and we are a part of that. So if our wealth comes from love, then it comes from within us. It's within us. It's not different. It's not separate. We are not separate from our wealth. It seems so obvious, right? That we've thought that we were. And we've thought we had to go out there and get it versus tap in to our own natural frequency of love, our soul, our heart that we came in with. We are not detached from wealth. It's our inherent birthright to create as much of it as we want. So what I realized was the true way to attract wealth and abundance is just put that magnet in your heart. And the more you are kind to yourself and you treat yourself with love, the way you speak to yourself, the way you physically treat yourself, the way you allow others to treat you, the more wealth you will attract. Wealth of all kinds, money and joy and health and strength. It was such a simple yet potent, an obvious breakthrough. So here we are. We are simply here to express ourselves as love, to experience even more love. And when we experience pain and fear and doubt and jealousy and judgment and all the ego-driven things that are in this perceived reality, we get to then know love even more because we can know the opposite of the feelings of love. I like to think about it like the movie Aladdin. Jasmine was a princess and lived in a palace, and it's all she ever knew. And she was frustrated that it's all she knew. She's like, I want to know what else is out there. And her father's like, why? It's not great. Like, it's really great here. You're so safe here. She's like, but I want to know. I want to know what it's like out there. I want to know what it's like to be poor and to buy food and to do all the things, right? So it's so funny. Our soul is on a similar journey. Our soul at home in love, you might call it consciousness, or you might call it heaven, or whatever you want to call it. Our soul is at home there going, I just want to experience this other thing. It's like, why? Well, it's actually a very loving intention to want that. You're not asking to experience it because you want to feel bad. You actually want to experience the opposite of love so that you could know the greatness of love. They talk about this idea in A Course in Miracles called the tiny mad idea. And the tiny mad idea is that we are all connected consciousness of God and love. And this idea, this tiny mad idea sparked, well, what else, right? What else is out there? I'm paraphrasing, of course, but what's out there that's not this? Whew. And then the universe was born. And for the longest time, I had a hard time with that theory because I thought, you know what? If God is love and universal consciousness is love and love is perfect, how could there possibly be an imperfect thought that happens inside perfection? That just doesn't fly, right? Virgo rising, it's got to make sense. So once I had this epiphany, I realized that tiny mad idea was an idea sparked from love. It was sparked from the curiosity of how can I know love even more? Ooh, yeah, let's create a place that is so hard and so terrible, but we're going to put just enough beautiful, amazing, wonderful things. Actually, more wonderful than's not wonderful, but we're going to invent this ego that's going to help us focus on all the bullshit instead of focusing on all the magic. But we're going to put this concept of manifestation into human ability so we can connect with our higher self, our soul self, our self that is love, and create whatever we want on this planet. If and only if we connect with love. And go. And here we are. You can create whatever you want. If you watch videos on people who manifested lottery tickets or incredible fortunes or Vegas luck or whatever you could imagine, the ones who talk the most consciously about their intentions of receiving and building great wealth are the ones who wanted to do something really good with their money, the ones who wanted to help others, the ones who wanted to give back. Now, this doesn't mean that everybody who has a bunch of money deserves a Purple Heart and they're great citizens. No, that's not what I'm saying. What I am saying is you can use this theory almost like a magic trick to create more wealth and abundance in your life. And I have done this and I am doing it now. And I have consistently done this. When I look back at all the opportunities in my life that I've manifested, the little ones and the fun, silly ones, I was on The Price is Right twice. I didn't win. I didn't get to the showcase, but that's because fear kicked in and all sorts of other things. I believe that if I had stayed focused on the joy and the love of winning for all the reasons I would want to win, then I probably would have won. And even the second time I got on, I wanted to get on because I wanted to show my grandma that I got on. She loved the show. I even wore a t-shirt with her face on it. Say, hey, I'm doing this for her. I'm doing it for love. So how do you apply this to your business? This is really simple. if you're an entrepreneur, you want to make more money, you want to do better at sales, all that stuff, you want to book more gigs, create from a place of impact. Be generous, be of service, be helpful, be loving. This doesn't mean you give everything away for free. Absolutely not. You should charge very well for your services if nobody does it like you, and you are authentic and amazing and kind and loyal and generous and all the wonderful things that I know you are, or that I know you hope to aspire to be. So I want you to do two things. I want you to connect to your why. Why are you doing it? The way that I got on The Price is Right, because I just wanted to make my grandma happy. Why are you doing it? I have a Facebook group called the Trailblazer Community, and every once in a while I'll post, who are you doing it for? What are you doing it for? And people post pictures of their kids, their dogs, their charities. It's exciting. This is why. This is what motivates us. If you've been feeling a little stuck or depressed or lost or whatever it might be, you probably have felt disconnected from your why or your purpose. It is essential for us to feel significance, that we are contributing. So if you haven't felt like you're contributing, contribute. Today, I sent out an email breaking down your zone of genius. If you haven't read The Big Leap by Gay Hendricks, please read it. It is one of his original books. If you've heard the term your zone of genius, he created it, not anybody else. And he's just a fantastic human being. And I was sharing in an email I sent out to my community about your zone of genius and how to break it down and what questions to ask yourself. And I was teaching some other methodologies that are not in The Big Leap. I got so many responses just saying, thank you. This is what I needed to hear today. I'm so happy you sent this. And it took me 5 minutes to write the email and 60 seconds to set it up and send it. And I made a contribution today. And I'm not tallying it all up, going, oh, how many sales did I get from this email today? It's not about that. And if people are telling you to do that, then do it just from a place of understanding your marketing. But I want you to create from a place of love, create from a place of impact, give and share from a place of inspiration and service. It'll show up for you. One of the reasons I know my godmother did so well in her business was because she was intuitive and she used her intuition to be helpful. And I'm not telling everybody to give all their patients or their clients their cell phone number and let them call you at 9 o'clock at night. Okay. Maybe above and beyond with her with that one. But of course she did well. She had a heart of generosity. And if generosity isn't inherently natural for you, then find ways that feel rewarding and fun and fulfilling for you to give back. Maybe you'll volunteer. And don't do it for karma points, right? When I say your wealth comes from love, I'm not telling you, okay, go volunteer for 6 hours and then you're going to win the lottery, okay? It all comes back to intention. And we have thoughts like, okay, I want to win the lottery, right? And then we have thoughts which are, okay, I'm going to go volunteer. Okay, why am I volunteering? I'm volunteering because it's the right thing to do. I'm volunteering because I want to be of service. I want to be of impact. I want to feel significant. But we have sub-thoughts. We always have sub-thoughts that are running underneath our main thoughts, whether we are conscious of them or not. So if your subconscious thought is, I'm doing it because I want some good karma points, or, you know, my wealth comes from love, so I better do some loving things, it's not going to work, babe. You have to legitimately come from a place of kindness and compassion and generosity if you're going to make this work. So if you don't have anyone in your life that you want to take care of or give a gift to or support, think about your causes, your charities. Every guest who comes on this show, I ask them, what charity may I donate to in your name for you participating and being a part of this show? And I love the answers that I see. It might be Charity Water, it might be ASPCA, it might be LGBTQIA rights in states that are oppressive or whatnot. So I do, and I love it. And I get to give back by having this show and creating time to do this. And I get to receive through potential ads, you know, ad spend that is played when you watch the show and listen to the show. But ultimately, I get to be helpful. And this is my favorite thing. It is my favorite thing to be helpful. So if you're looking at these gurus that you love on Instagram, like Mel Robbins or Jay Shetty or some of these people that have so many followers, notice what they all have in common. They are sharing helpful, inspiring content. I know this conversation today has motivated you to look inside yourself and imagine that beautiful infinity loop around your own heart. Put that mirror right in your heart for yourself and know that your wealth comes from love. And if you've been going through a tough time financially, or you've hit a plateau and you want to create more and you want to make a bigger impact and you want to get in front of bigger audiences, do something loving for yourself and others. And do it again and do it again and do it again. And keep doing it until you forget even what your original intention around money was. Do it until becoming generous and helpful is second nature to you in every single thing that you do. That your sub thought underneath everything you do is, I am loving and I am helpful. And remember, put you first. There's too many nurses out there who are sick and depressed. There's too many coaches and healers out there who are sick and depressed. One of the first things that I said when I started breaking down this philosophy for you was to put that magnet in your heart. And the more you love yourself and do kind things for yourself and treat yourself with love, you will be rewarded. Give back, and the universe will provide. By simply practicing this theory and putting it into action of my wealth comes from love, you will be a happier person immediately. You want instant gratification? Here it is. Go be loving. I'll talk to you soon. If you enjoyed this episode today, please leave the best review possible and share it with your friends and family.